Okay.
Welcome to St. Augustine this evening, the Mike Davis Show, and we have a great show for you tonight. We got another candidate in today. We had Jim Priester last night, who's running for sheriff. So in all fairness to the other candidate and our current sheriff, Rob Hardwick, has stopped by today. Rob, thank you very much.
Good evening, and thanks for having me on, Mike. Appreciate y'all. Yeah, as always, thank you.
And I have Troy Blevins. That's it. That's all.
Is this how this is going to go tonight, by the way?
No,
yeah, because I can fire back.
This is a serious. I didn't invite Davey in just for this.
Oh, where is Davey at?
You wanted serious. You knew not to.
No Davey.
I told
No Davey
Davey
tonight.
he couldn't
No
come
Davey.
in. Davey loves you. And I said, this is a serious candidate interview. Davey, you can't show up. And he said, there's too much pressure. I didn't want to come. So that was Davey. So 100%. But now, let's a couple things.
Sure.
I do want to apologize. I apologized last night to our listeners. Troy and I just did not physically have the time to do all the interviews we wanted to do. We felt like your race was a very important race to do interviews in. And I was asked by a very good family friend who I never would turn down to have Jim in. And I said, on fairness, we'll bring Rob in
Sure.
as well.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So I do apologize to our listeners that it's back-to-back nights. It's not all dropped on the same night. I wish we had had the time to do that. And then the other caveat, so everyone knows I have been friends with you for a long time.
Sure.
I've donated to your campaign.
Yes,
so I just want people to know that that's kind of the background I come from, and I'll let Troy do the same. So so people know where we're at.
No, we said last night, you have my support. The only sign that's in my yard, and the youngest supporter is in my family. So, so I think she's showed up on your page already.
She has, absolutely.
So oldest supporter and youngest supporter.
Oldest and cutest, ugliest, ugliest and cutest, and oldest and youngest.
Yes.
So, so we kind of explained that, even though I have known Jim almost as long as I've known you.
Yep.
So, so it's you're going to get a lot of the same questions.
Sure.
That we asked before. And we might go beep just to, because we understand you like to talk a little.
Well, I see, I'm not going to get started. You're trying to keep me out here. You're absolutely correct, Troy. Next question, please.
Wow.
I'm trying to get through. We could have ended the show right there for an hour. So let's just stop.
Well, question number one is going to take a little bit of time.
Sure.
Because you have so much experience. But give us a brief, in case someone doesn't know or hasn't met you.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody in this county, because you guys work so hard on it.
Sure.
What is your background and experience in law enforcement?
I have to start off, when you talk about background and experience in law enforcement, you have to talk about what is the base of my, of why I'm here and why I'm in this position. That's my wife and my two boys. I think it's important we know that my wife and I have been married for 33 years. We met in a little high school here called St. Joseph Academy when we were sophomores. Fast forward, of course, we married up in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, when I was in the United States military, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And then she gave birth to our first son when I came home from Desert Storm. And Cole, of course, is 32 years old. He's went to law school, went to Florida State University, and then now works for a company out west called Patagonia. He's doing a phenomenal job. And his beautiful fiance that he met at Florida State University, she's also working for Patagonia. My youngest son, Brett, he's 28 years old. Met his beautiful wife at Flagler College. She's alumni, or they're both alumni, like my wife and I are. And we're due for our first grandbaby in September. Brett is currently serving in the United States military. He's a Army helicopter pilot. He's actually off right now in Army helicopter instructor pilot school. And the reason why I say that is it's just that family atmosphere. When you talk about who Rob Hardwick is, you have to identify me through my family first, because faith and family is what I've always put, of course, in front of everything else. Went in the United States military right out of high school, basically. Joined the Florida National Guard, and then actually went to active duty. So I didn't last in the Florida Guard too long. I did a delayed entry program between my junior and senior year. Went off to basic training and then came back home and knew I wanted to serve, full-time active duty. So went and served active duty. Was stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I was actually OPCON to the 82nd Airborne Division. I was actually under 18. It's a big, long military terms, but 18th Airborne Corps, 35th Signal Brigade, and all the way down to OPCON to 82nd Airborne Division. Went off to my first combat tour with Desert Storm and came back, of course, and married my high school sweetheart, per se. We knew each other a long, long time when we became good friends, and married her, like I said before, and had our first baby at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. After we did our total years of service up there, I came home and joined the Florida National Guard and continued to serve in the Florida National Guard up until 2018. some people understand this. They'll say, well, the math doesn't add up, Sheriff. Why isn't there more years you were actually, because I had some breaks in service. I was in the Guard for a while. I get back out. So if you're military, you understand this. There's 25 years on my pay and there's 20 years for retirement, if that makes sense. But it's another long story. Anyways, the last part of my military career, I really I finished on great terms, meaning that I was basically what they call black hat. I was an instructor at the Officer Candidate School, truly making men and women that were heading over to combat overseas. So I felt like I added that my own expertise as being a father, a husband in a law enforcement profession, and then added, of course, my military experience and combat experience as people were going overseas. So in my 25 years of service in the United States military, I had a combat tour too as well, another combat tour in 2003 and 2004. I remember the phone call like it was yesterday. It was December 22nd, 2002, or I'm sorry, December 27th of 2002. My wife and I were watching our kids play out front, and I received a phone call from my unit that says, you've been activated to active duty. I said, okay, when do I report? Tomorrow morning. I left the next morning on the 28th of December in 2002 and returned back to my home in April of 2004. And I say that because when I talk about my law enforcement career, I've always been a man of uniform. I felt like I needed that structure in my life. Of course, I played football and sports at St. Joe and went off and played, of course, later on some organized sports in the United States military. But I felt like that structure in my life was what truly made me the better person. You know, I go back and talk about, my professional law enforcement career started right when I left 82nd Airborne Division from Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I got recruited by Florida Department of Corrections, and I actually worked for Tomoka Correctional Institution. Ignorance, of course, to what the system actually did and what the prison system did, but what it did was open my eyes to, 28 years later when I became your sheriff, or 26 years later when I became your sheriff, and we'll talk about that in a minute, what we did different here at the sheriff's office. So had a phenomenal career, of course, in law enforcement. I went from Department of Corrections up to Flagler County Sheriff's Office. It depended on what day the nepotism law was on, of course, around the agencies in the state. And the day I applied for St. Johns County Sheriff's Office, I was denied employment because of my brother-in-law worked here for 25 years, my wife's brother. So I stayed at Flagler County Sheriff's Office and truly found I from prison to Flagler County Sheriff's Office, cross-trained over, of course, became a law enforcement officer and got hired by the city of St. Augustine. Chief Robinson back then was a phenomenal man. I remember Lauren Luters did my background investigation. And right before I got hired with the city of St. Augustine, the sheriff at the time, Dan McCarthy, said, I would like you to be a deputy sheriff here in Flagler County, but I'd already committed to St. Augustine. Had a great career at St. Augustine City, just fell in love with investigative work. Was given the honor to work as the liaison with the state attorney's office and became their detective per se as a liaison, and worked a lot of different types of crimes and just fell in love with investigating detective type work, investigative work. So anyway, I got offered a job right before I actually was deployed to Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2002, 2003. But again, I was getting deployed. Next thing you know, I physically was sworn into the office of the state attorney in 2003 via Skype when I was actually deploying over to Iraq. By then, John Tanner was the state attorney. So I went away to war, came home a different man. I had a lot of things go on overseas that beyond my control, but I had a soldier die with me named Jeff Warshow. Blood was physically on my hands for some operational mistakes that went on during that mission, and just came home a different person, but also came home understanding, of course, what leadership meant and what, of course, expenses of war meant too as well, meaning psychological, mentally, physically, and also too through life loss too. So again, came back home and switched over to the state attorney's office and actually opened their homicide investigative unit for the North, which was Putnam, St. Johns, and Flagler County. Under then John Tanner was the state attorney, and then got promoted to run the homicide unit for the entire 7th Circuit as an assistant chief. R.J. Larissa, as you remember, won the election and took over the state attorney's office, and he kept my promotion and actually made me an assistant chief over investigations for all 4 counties. Truly some of the best times in my life, of course, working homicide and death investigations and other police corruption type cases. So fast forward, of course, I applied for the St. Augustine Beach Police Department chief position. I didn't want it, actually. My dreams were to go to St. Johns County Sheriff's Office eventually, and I had a lot of conversations with the sheriff at the time about eventually making my way over there. My life just took the path that was chosen. Just a real quick off story. I got a phone call from then State Attorney Angela Corey one night, and she said, "Did you apply for the position as St. Augustine Beach Police Chief?" And I said, "Absolutely not. I don't want to go there. I live in that jurisdiction, and it's not where I want to be in life. I love what I do as the assistant chief." So I put in for the position. 224 applicants put in for that position, and the list got smaller and smaller. I'm like, there's no way my leadership style and my resume is ready for this. And lo and behold, it was. And I think you all know this. Went over there really with just a mission driven with surrounding myself with phenomenal people that were stronger than me, which is my gift. And we turned that agency around, got it accredited within less than 18 months, got selected as CJSTC commissioner under then Governor Rick Scott. So just things in life just really went in a great direction, meaning my leadership was being tested. And I will say this, as a sheriff now and as a small agency, it was tougher there answering to 5 commissioners, because that's who I answered to, if you remember. And I went through 9 commissioners total in my 8 years. And again, we just we put that agency on the map, and we put the chief's position on the map. And of course, when the office of the sheriff, of course, when the previous sheriff decided he was going to retire, of course, and they were looking for who the next person was going to be, we sat in a room and figured it out amongst a few of us, and they chose me to go ahead and move forward and run. And we had a great success. I mean, 70-30%, on the primary, and almost 95% on the general. And now we go into the office of the sheriff, and what we've done there now is just a lot of good things, which I'm sure we'll talk about tonight. So that's who I am. That's what I'm about. I'm running on basically is what we've done as a leader in St. Johns County, and what we've done as a community in St. Johns County, and the amazing thing my men and women have done in the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office to protect and serve St. Johns County as we continue to grow beyond boundaries. So again, I'm sure these questions will talk about some of the crime stats and stuff that actually we have going on now.
All
right. One of the things he touched on, and it is one of the questions, so I think it's important to kind of segue into it, is, and this is a question that's on everyone's mind, is mental health issues that face law enforcement.
Sure.
And how you're handling it as a sheriff, and how you can do better.
Yep.
And, with your personal experience that you and I've talked about,
sure.
What do you think gives you the edge over your opponent in this category?
Sure. So first of all, in order to respond to mental health crisis, you have to be trained internally and be mentally fit internally. So what I did was I brought a program here to be mentally fit for all of our employees in the sheriff's office. And this goes from the executive staff assistants reading the homicide reports to the sexual battery reports, to also our people responding to this stuff, whether it's a phone call or whether it's actually responding or suicide in the jail. So we brought a very robust program to our employees first. In order to provide that first-class customer service, you got to make sure your people are actually mentally fit, physically fit, and morally fit to actually respond, and financially fit. So what we did, of course, on the mental health side of the house was we brought a psychologist into the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. Her name is Dr. Tracy Hedgemanowski. She is there for all of our people in the agency. We started doing things like we had a peer-to-peer, but the peer-to-peer was just surviving. We got really invested in the peer-to-peer. We have a brand new app on our phones called Cortico app, where our men and women can actually, just over the last few months, we added this app where they can physically get mentally fit, wellness fit, and financially fit. It's all one big package to make you mentally fit. And we really went back old school faith-based too as well. We always had faith-based, but we had just enough to get by. We went back just a little bit old school again, trying to make sure that our men and women, and also too, we brought on financial advisors to make sure you're financially fit. It's all that package of mentally fit within. Well, on the outside, in order to provide those services, we felt like we had to be, better trained than everybody else, but more fit than everybody else. The partnerships we had here have been phenomenal. Of course, we had some leadership changes in St. Johns County, as you know, with Nanji Pulfus coming in to Epic. And then we had some other partnerships with SMA, with Ivan Kissimmee. So we had some leadership changes. But also, too, we had some for-profits out there that were banging at the door saying, we can help you, too. In the middle of this, we changed from Flagler Health Plus over to UF St. John's. So we had a lot of changes there. But what we did was partner up with those, make these relationships strong, not be afraid to go ahead and use the resources that have not been out there in the past, with the demand actually kind of coming down on us. But here's what we did. Over the last year, we added a brand new co-responder unit. I've been wanting to do this my entire professional career, is putting a social worker in a seat side by side with our deputy sheriffs, providing that, the expertise, the subject matter expert in the car with us. So we added a co-responder unit, meaning we had a co-responder group of people that we put out an email saying, if you're interested in taking care of our mentally ill, substance abuse, please, come forward. We had Sergeant Manning step up. We had Corporal Hurt step up, some other deputy sheriffs step up, saying we want to be a part of this co-responder unit to, cut the stigma on the streets, but also cut the resources of being abused by going to my county jail when they're not looking for those resources. We need to find the mental health resources. So with that, of course, the co-responder unit responds to these calls for service. So physically, just this week, we actually got some great news. I had a meeting. I'm on the board of directors for the UF Healthcare Connect. And great news with Paige Stanton. She's reached out to her supervisors, and they're going to team up with us with another co-responder unit. I talked to Nanji Pulfus the other day. They're willing to do another co-responder unit. So the goal is, in the end, and we're hoping to do this by the end of the year, And right now, Epic is paying for the co-responder, and we simply just have a deputy sheriff adding that element to the car. We're trying to figure out, is it a deputy sheriff in an unmarked car or marked car? Right now, Leslie Waller, who's our co-responder, riding with our deputy sheriffs for these important calls for mental health and substance abuse crisis. Is she in a uniform? They in a marked car, unmarked car? We're still trying to figure that out to see what the St. Johns County residents need the most. We also, of course, as you know, over the years, partnered up with SES because SES has that specialized unit that responds out for crisis intervention on children. For a while there, it was only school hours, and now, of course, Skylar has really stepped it up, and now they're 24/7 too as well. And I think you'll see, and I hope you asked this question about my jail, but you'll see the decrease or maybe the management number of people in my jail. This all coincides with them. Also, too, in my jail, mental health and mental illness, we have a full-time staffing unit there with licensed clinical social workers that actually work the mental health piece of our people that come into our gated community for that temporary basis. And then we did the same thing on the outreach program, the reentry program, the pre-entry program. Sergeant Michael Clark under Lieutenant Melton is basically going out and finding these people that are in crisis mode, mental health mode. We're trying to stop them from coming into the St. Johns County Jail and getting them help on the streets out there. So I think we've gone above and beyond of what the rest of the country is doing. I get this. I understand this. I've watched soldiers and sailors and airmen commit suicide on a daily basis, upwards of 22 to 23 a day. There's a crisis in America, not just in the United States military, but there's a crisis in America with people that are starving for help and attention.
One of the main issues, and it's been a main issue for a number of years, school safety. So I know that you have worked to improve school safety. What's in place in the year coming up, and what have you done, and what does St. Johns County continue to do from a sheriff's department to make sure our schools are safe?
First of all, and Mike and Troy, you both know this, I've been coaching 28 years of my life. Matter of fact, this is the first year I've taken a season off in high school football, and I can't tell you the last time. But this campaign is important to the residents of St. Johns County and all of my employees. So, one thing at the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office is, with a horrific incident like Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in 2018, you have 17 people that were wounded, 17 people that were murdered, but the entire country went upside down about the safety of our children. But what that did here in the state of Florida was it forced us on legislature to go through and be approved, saying you're going to have what they call a guardianship program or a law enforcement officer in all the charter and public schools in the state of Florida. And that happened here in St. Johns County. It was a slow rolling, I should say. However, when I took over as your sheriff, we committed to going ahead and putting a deputy sheriff in every one of the schools in St. Johns County. And then also to the partnership with Chief Jen Michaud. At the time, Chief Barry Fox reached out to them saying, hey, some of these schools are in your jurisdiction. Let's go ahead and do a partnership so you can, have your police officers work, of course, in the city schools. So we'll kind of fast forward, you have that going on where you have these deputy sheriffs in there. And this year, over the last year, we've really invested, of course, in our schools and safety. So last year, we added 2 threat assessment deputy sheriffs. I was noticing that there are deputy sheriffs that work in our schools, and they're some of the best men and women, I'm telling you what, they're in uniform because they're doing such a great job in such a hard environment with lack of accountability by some parents, of course, and these kids that just have so much pressure by this thing they call social media and these platforms on their devices. So what we did, of course, we added 2 threat assessment deputy sheriffs. Last year was the full school year. We had Deputy Flood working in the north. He came out of Joint Terrorist Task Force for the New York Police Department. And then you had Deputy Laura Lucas, who's had a phenomenal career, of course, in law enforcement, her and her husband, Brian. So we put them in the schools, and one has the north, one has the south. And the goal was to take that reactive response by our deputy sheriffs in the school and give the proactivity, back to them so these 2 threat assessment specialists could do that. We did that. We also added, of course, this year, we've added 2 brand new canines to our schools. Canine Tiger is in the school now as we speak. He's narcotics trained, and he'll be gun metal trained too as well. And then the second dog will be has been awarded to Brian Wright. Brian Wright will get his dog soon. He's got a dog now. We're field testing. And that dog will also smell narcotics and gunmetal. Here's what else changed. A little girl named Alyssa died while sitting at her desk in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. She was a freshman in high school. She was brutally murdered by crews. There was a law created last year called Alyssa's Law. Alyssa's Law went into effect, and we reached right out to the St. Johns County School District and said, hey, this is what we're going to do with you. What can we make this better? We picked a product called Centegix. Centegix is currently on all 6,000 plus employees in the St. Johns County School District. Whether you're a teacher, you're a cook, you're a nurse, you're a principal, you're a coach, they all wear, it looks just like almost like an ID card. It's very similar to the size of an ID card. You can physically squeeze the ID card. It also sets off a silent alarm, which is what Alyssa's Law is a silent way to notify 911. That silent alarm notifies the 911 center of the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office and our real-time intelligence center. And let's just say my wife, of course, as you know, she works in the school district and she's in St. Augustine High School, in the band room. If Kendall pushes, of course, that strategic alarm on her neck, which goes off silently, it tells Kendall's exact location, be GPS, and it tells that Kendall Hardwick actually pushed that alarm on her neck to our real-time intelligence center with zero delay. We immediately go to work of taking over the cameras in the St. Augustine High School through our real-time intelligence center and start triaging what is going on with Kendall. Why did she push that alarm? At the same exact simultaneous time that she pushes her alarm, it also alerts the phone from the security threat assessment team in that particular school. It's usually a principal, APs, coaches, the YRD, of course. It alerts them on their phones that Kendall Hardwick has pushed her strategics. This is her location in the school on the map, and this is where we're heading to. So you got two things going on at one time, and then you have a force of deputy sheriffs that are responding that cannot be stopped until we find out what the suspicion is of why strategics actually was pushed, why not. The other thing we did too was last year when we actually switched to a brand new company called Flock Camera System. We were in Vigilant for a long, long time. What we did was we sat down, we said, hey, we're going to strategically relocate these license plate readers in conjunction with our schools to protect these schools. The other thing too is we spent time in the summertime of all of our deputy sheriffs last year, went through training at Freedom Crossing Academy, Bartram Trail High School, and Tocoi Creek, going through scenario-based training in these schools. We had smoke simulators in there, alarms going off, speakers going off, kids in there role-playing and yelling, trying to get that environment to there. Our men and women trained so hard, and they used to include using real-time intelligence on the radio, looking at the cameras, walking them through where the scenario is at. So as we go forward this year, I got a great relationship with the school district. I'm blessed that, matter of fact, today I was at the brand new school, Trout Creek, walking through there to see what the security risks were. Yesterday I was at Lakeside Academy, the other brand new school off 210. I walked through that yesterday morning, helped direct traffic because we had some traffic issues there. I think it's the involvement, the engagement. We have 62 deputy sheriffs as we speak that are assigned to our school youth resource deputies. To our schools here. So we have at least one in all the schools, and then the floaters, if they're not busy, are working in the high school. So I think we're doing a good thing. And me as your sheriff, because I'm a coach, I hope that's they're emulating what I'm trying to do and say, hey, we want to coach too, get back involved in the schools. Today, and not to, to pat myself on the back, but Deputy Sheriff Harpin and I today were at Trout Creek, and he took me in one of the EBD classes in there, and there was a little boy named Cade, and I walked in the door and Cade was screaming, and I'm going to guess he's probably 6 years old. And he was saying, my dad told me you're going to take me to jail. I mean, he was screaming. He's throwing book bags around. He threw a lunchbox at me, and I sat down on the floor with this kid, and I wish you could have seen it on the way out of there. But he gave me a fist bump out of there. We sat there. I read a book to him. He was looking for cats in a book. That's what we got to do. We got to get off this level of we're better than you and get our arrogance and egos out of the way and go back to old-fashioned policing. We have a chance right now in these schools to make a difference in the smallest kids. These little kids today that saw me in kindergarten need to know that they don't be ever afraid of me. No matter what your mom and dad, if we can tell the parents to stop threatening your kids with the cops are going to come get you, because we don't do that. We only do that when the parents act like idiots. But, with that, again, this is our chance. And I got a SWAT guy named Deputy Tillett, who's up at one of our schools, who's out unloading groceries in a car and stuff like that. He's playing jump rope with kids, Foursquare. These are my men and women that are doing the right thing in the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office to break those barriers and lower those stigmatism of that we're doing something wrong. We're doing it right in St. Johns County, better than anybody else. And my men and women are awesome.
Yeah. All right. And one of the programs to kind of feed into where you were leading off with that, and that kind of brings community and law enforcement together, is the PAL program.
Sure.
So the PAL program, you guys have a new facility that's coming online. Talk about the importance of the PAL to you and where you see it moving forward.
So first of all, PAL is personal to me. Mike DeLeon, who really took the reins and run with this under Sheriff Perry. And then, of course, we had Kevin Kelshaw as a coach with our old PAL baseball teams that were known, statewide. But it started with me, too, as well. My kids, I just told you their ages are 28 and 32. They started in the PAL League at the youngest age possible, and I coached every sport they could possibly think of. And, the PAL thing to me is right now we're serving around 2,200 kids a year in the PAL program. Over 70% of those are on free or reduced lunches. So we're hitting the right targeted area. I went to Governor DeSantis with an appropriation a little over a year and a half ago. I presented a $5.9 million budget to build a brand new PAL facility. I was looking for land. God bless Paul Waldron. Him and I had a long conversation. Him and his father had a dream out to the property off of Nice. but it never came to fruition because of budgeting over years and years ago.
2007, it died.
There you go. Yes, sir. And Troy, you know this too well. But anyway, so
I was there when it died.
I just saw his daughter yesterday, actually, because she's one of the APs up at the new academies. But anyways, I wanted to create that vision. Everybody's begging for field space in St. Johns County. Troy, you know this well. Mike, you know this very well. And again, so that PAL program to me it's much bigger than sports though. It's other things too. It's leadership, it's that life skill lessons and stuff like that. It's finding the right people to run that program, which I think we have right now in place. So the governor signed the appropriations for the full amount, which was $5.9 million. I kicked myself in the rear end. I should have asked for $15 million. That's another topic. But anyway, so in $5 million, 5 years ago would have gave us the entire complex with buildings. Right now it's going to give us, we need field space. So we're going to build field space out there, of course, with a track. It'll be the only middle school and elementary school track for these kids to go out there and actually start practicing track. I used to box a lot. I've always been a fighter when I was in the military, and I used to teach combatives in the military. I wanted to bring a boxing program. Next thing you know, we brought it here to the Police Athletic League. We were averaging, 80 to 60 kids a year. We had a great event last year where our kids got a chance to box and showcase. Next thing you know, we have more females than males in our boxing program. But I envision this place of having a ring where the kids can come and hang out with cops and females and males and come there and just let their aggression out under a controlled atmosphere. So the PAL program is going in the right direction. There's not a sport. We kind of have to adjust fire based on what the associations are doing across the county. We're not going to compete with them. We want to get those sports that these kids are maybe can't get involved in. So we've really targeted, of course, southern St. Johns County and central St. Johns County, just because that's the way the demographics work here. So we have our boxing program now out to the W.E. Harris Center, which is the old elementary school in Hastings. But the goal is to move that program, of course, to over a central location, which will be off Nice Road. So we're getting there. But I'm a big actually, I was going to take a 6U team this year, but election kind of put a damper in that. But our men and women that work PAL are phenomenal, and the volunteers we have, the base core volunteers. I mean, our girl cheer team, dance team are national champions, state champions. I mean, and these girls, by the way, they go compete against other places that are practicing. This is a serious story here, true story. They're practicing inside buildings that have AC and marked out floors. Our girls put tape and spray paint on grass on Pomar Park Field and go win the national championship. Studs and rock stars in St. Johns County, pal.
Yeah. And Mike and I have had this conversation. I think you and I have had this conversation. Besides Dad, the next best title.
Yeah. Yep, so you're right. You guys have both done that. You guys have both done that.
Yeah. Switch gears a little bit. Current budget for the sheriff's office.
Yes.
So comments on where it is now, where you'd like it to be.
Sure.
Just give us the overall budget review.
Yeah, so when I took over as sheriff, we'll just keep using the word 4 years ago. I increased the budget by around $30 million. And I think you all know this because you've owned businesses, you've been involved in businesses. When I took over my sheriff's office, I took over our sheriff's office, I should say, just under 4 years ago. Our dispatchers were making around $30,000 a year. We were short on staff. We had 70 dispatchers, and we were probably short 20, 25, if not more. Our men and women were getting, overtime so much they were getting burned out on that call. Since then, we've increased that pay from $30,000 up to just over $50,000 now. And that's a big cost for 70 employees with all their benefits too as well. Our deputy sheriffs were down the low $40,000 a year. This year, it's if the way the commission actually I presented the budget to them, is that their deputy sheriff should make just around $60,000 a year. So we've come a long ways from that. But here's what we forget about too. It's the other employees of the agency too. It's my school crossing guards that get no benefits. It's my PSAs, my 70 school crossing guards, my 44 PSAs that get no benefits or hourly wages. They keep under 29 hours so they can keep under the benefit level there. But also too, I hate the word secretary. Our administrative staff is amazing. Those are the men and women that make this big machine, whether it's HR, records. There's so many people that are CCOs in the towers, These are people that make this big machine and watch over our men and women that do this job. They were in the high 20s, low 30s when I took over. So now the lowest paid employees are up in the low 40s. So with that, of course, comes, it's expensive. 80%, 76% of my budget goes towards compensation and benefits. It's expensive to run a sheriff's office. But we figured out right away, you cannot leave the agency behind and expect to recruit and or retain. But also, too, we had some increases in health benefits every single year. Last year, we got hit with over $1 million. This year, $1 million in health benefits. I'm not a fan of let's give them take the money back out of their pocket. Let's give them more, we charge them more for benefits and take it back out of their pocket. You give them a pay raise, but you take it right back in benefits. Also, too, as you remember, in the Senate just a year and a half ago, right at the end, the speaker in what was actually passed by the governor, where they increased the amount of money that was put forth on the Florida retirement system. They hit us with just under $1 million last year during our budget period. And this year we knew to budget it back in at $1 million. We have to continue to provide the best equipment to provide first-class customer service. So I've added deputy sheriffs every single year, but when I tell you I add personnel, my staff and I sit down because things change. We might need more dispatchers. We might need more deputies. We might need more correctional deputies. So last year I never thought we'd fill those positions because words were out there just 4 years ago of defund the police, George Floyd, pandemic. Those were things we were dealing with when I took over as your sheriff. It was hard to recruit, hard to retain. Now, fast forward, we don't have those issues there. So with that too, of course, the budget too is we have a 1969 helicopter that's got to be replaced. It's got to go back to the federal government. Right now, Putnam County wants it, but that's not my choice. That's up to the federal government. However, we have a 1969 helicopter that there's no return on my investment at all. So since Neil Perry's days, they basically had 5 helicopters through the 1033 program. And under the 1033 program, those are surplus helicopters. Well, Neil Perry back then, of course, as you know, he was a full bird colonel. He had those relationships. They got a bunch of helicopters from Texas brought here, and they basically made some good helicopters. Our mechanics are phenomenal. They flew some of those helicopters until they dropped out of the sky. This is a legitimate story. Just a few years ago, Matt Bellamy was flying one that had a complete fuel malfunction just over TPC. Stacy Attell was riding shotgun in there as a TFO. They landed, but they were bruised up. They're lucky to be alive. Fast forward behind that, Mark Sham was flying a helicopter right over our sheriff's office. He took off, same thing, fuel malfunction. Him and BJ Hall riding shotgun, put it back down. They came out bumped and bruised. 2 helicopters out of OH-58s, which is the same brand, Bell, that was used in Vietnam, is the same one I have now in 1969. It's time to go away. Our pilots deserve better. We bought a 2013 used from Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office just before I took over as sheriff. The previous sheriff actually asked me if that's what we wanted to do here, so we had that conversation going when I was running for sheriff. I paid it off last year ahead of the payment plan based on money we had left over that if we didn't have a hurricane or something like that. So we brought that helicopter up for an inspection to Louisiana just end of last year, and they noticed corrosion on the bottom. The helicopter was kept in Louisiana for 2 months. Well, they fixed the corrosion on the belly and said you get one bite at the apple. You can't fix the corrosion again on the bottom of the Bell 407 2013. Well, since then, I'm friends now with Rick, who's actually the sheriff down in Palm Beach, and he said, those helicopters out of my fleet flew over the ocean majority of the time because they did a lot of surveillance or patrols over the ocean. So there was a lot, of course, as you know, there's a lot of salt in there. So now really I've had one helicopter for the last 6 months because the 2013 has been in Grumman for a very extensive paint job trying to fix some of this corrosion that was fixed in Louisiana. So we were flying this OH-58 1969. What I got to tell you is that, last year, and not to get off topic, but on this helicopter stuff, the helicopter last year was used just around 500 times, called out. We're going to fast forward now because now we have enough pilots to put it up more than we had before. And we're talking about with a helicopter being down for 6 months, so one helicopter being in service. So since October last year to this current date right here, we are almost at 900 calls for service in our helicopter. But this is the important thing. It's not just up doing patrols. 22 people were actually rescued that were in distress, a boat in distress or swimmer in distress. 22 adults, usually from dementia or something like that wandered off, were actually called out by the sheriff's office. 18 people that were, 18 children that were actually called out too for those. So it's not just a helicopter up, running around doing no calls for service. Today, I physically heard it used twice. A couple actually ran from the police today that were actually wanted for theft. It was a very unique case out of Jacksonville. They stopped the vehicle at the 312 bridge, got out, and then took off running. Our helicopter fined them. So we don't want those bad people in our jurisdiction, but there's a lot of times we use that helicopter for, of course, proactive patrolling and things I said like distress swimmers and boaters and stuff like that.
I can tell you, right before Mark had to sit down right across over here, I was with him the week before.
Yeah.
All right. But that wasn't the scariest moment in that helicopter. I was with Chuck.
Oh, yeah.
Going back in the day. Same helicopter.
Sure.
All right. It hadn't changed. The same one you're talking about. And we dropped like 200 feet like that.
Yeah.
And Chuck was a Vietnam, pilot. And I mean,
he's a heck of a pilot. Chuck West was.
He was the Mac Daddy of pilot. And when I looked at him and he looked scared, I was like,
That's an issue. That's a problem. Yeah.
Let's go back.
Yeah.
Let's go back. You know, there was a pucker factor that I don't think I've experienced before.
He was probably one of the best pilots. Of course, him and Jerry did. There's a lot of good pilots that come through the program. Real quick, back on the budget too. Yep. This year there is an increase in the budget by almost $10 million. It was actually, and that's to give our deputy sheriffs an increase in pay. All of our employees will get an increase in pay, but also too, I've got to adjust the pay for the 6-year veteran and 11-year veteran too as well. I've got to retain the people that are there. You invest so much money in these deputy sheriffs. A brand new deputy sheriff today we bring it on board is about $202,000. It's the car, it's the training, it's the equipment, it's the special vests that they wear that are fitted to their bodies, it's their pay, it's their benefits. So it's about $202,000 for a brand new deputy sheriff to come on board. So here we are investing all this money in these deputy sheriffs. Think about what they cost after 5 years. So we decided as a staff to get together and say, hey, let's increase their pay a little bit more at 6 years. Let's increase their pay. And by the way, not just deputy sheriffs, everybody in the agency, 6-year veteran, 11-year veteran, we want them to be able to afford to live in St. Johns County and be able to stay in this agency and afford to raise their families.
One of the other questions that we looked at economically, right? So we've been riding on a pretty good economic high for a while.
Sure.
More than likely, at some point in time, there's going to be an economic downturn. How do you plan for that in the sheriff's department? And I know that government's different than business, and that your ad valorem taxes the first year or so will be the same, but then you're going to come out of that downturn a lot slower than business will. We'll recover, and you'll still be waiting on ad valorem taxes to catch up a year and a half later.
I think we're already doing that now, because right now, if you use the formula of 1.2 deputy sheriffs per 1,000 people, we're off by a lot of deputy sheriffs. So what we've done is actually technology-based police, meaning invest in technology-based policing, because that's not going to go away. Technology is going to continue to advance. So what we're doing actually now is, of course, continue to integrate the technology-based police and license plate readers, where we actually go into the Florida Department of Transportation cameras. We go into the school cameras. We're just doing a lot of things different than, of course, what we were probably doing back when that formula was created of 1.2 deputy sheriffs per 1,000. We're already preparing for it, but what we can't do is we can't go backwards. This county's got to properly prepare for how do we maintain not just the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. You can't cut back on first responder and public safety. It's not going to happen. So even if we have a downward turn, we don't lose our population. So if tomorrow the economy stops, 330,000 people don't move out of St. Johns County and quit shopping, quit moving in their vehicles, quit traffic crashes, impaired driving, quit domestic violence, quit thefts. We have to continue moving forward. The county's going to have to sit down with us. We get to that point, which was happened before, and say, how are we going to adjust fire here? Because we still have to provide those services to St. Johns County. What's not going to happen is we're not going backwards in St. Johns County of how we knew this county. It's never going back, by the way. So with that, again, we got to continue to move forward too, but you can't just cut my budget today with $30 million. I was in a class last year. I had 26, I was one of 26 sheriffs that was invited to Washington, D.C., Quantico last year. I was the only sheriff from the state of Florida. And I sat up there with 26 other sheriffs, 25 other sheriffs. One sheriff was a black female from Milwaukee County, Milwaukee. And she was sitting in my class, and during that class, her budget got cut $21 million. She sat there and said, she got teary-eyed. This is a black female, very dominant, very powerful female. Her budget's cut in front of us in class. And she said, I got to cut almost 300 deputy sheriffs out of my agency. I didn't know how to respond to that. You're going to take a city where there's crime in Milwaukee, but it gets better than that. Had a black female police chief from King County, from Seattle. She sat in my class and she talked about the things they were doing in the class, where they had a thing called a Chaz zone, where the cops didn't go into a Chaz zone. Those things are not going to happen under my leadership in St. Johns County, and the residents aren't going to allow it. So we can't go backwards on the budget. Now, if the county were to come to me and say, hey, listen, we got to tighten our belts up, and this year's sheriff, we can't give that pay increase, that's fair. But for the county to come back and say the taxes are no longer there, our reserves are no longer there, and you got to cut back on law enforcement by 100 deputy sheriffs, I'm going to tell you that maybe this job isn't for us right now. Maybe we need to think of a better way to police. But I think we've already prepared for that by going down the technology-based policing road.
All
right. Let's talk a little bit about violent crimes. We're very fortunate where we live, but some of our surrounding counties have kind of leaked into our county. How do you see violent crimes? And one of the flyers that I've seen out there is, we've increased on violent crime. I haven't personally seen it, but I'd like to see what are some of those real numbers from you? Yeah,
first of all, increase in violent crime, and I know that the number out there has been as high as 51% is what I was told, which if that would have happened here, you would have told me. I would have known, by the way.
And Mike and I talked about this. Like when they use percentage,
Yep.
That's why we want to know the real numbers.
Sure.
So if it's 51%, it went from
Sure.
2 to 4.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
a
100%.
big. Sure, it is 100%, and that could happen here because we had 3 murders last year, and Duval County had 118. So if I go up 2 murders, I just had a significant increase in my murders. So let's talk real quick about violent crime. So violent crime, first of all, and this is public record. Matter of fact, what I'll do is my staff will send this to you. You can post this, by the way, because this is public record. Every year we have to report to the Federal Bureau of Investigation to our what they call used to be called UCR codes, Uniform Crime Reports. This happened back in 1961 when the federal government tried to get a grasp, of course, on violent crime being committed all across America. So 1961, we started this thing called UCRs, Uniform Crime Reports. So we did that all the way up until 2022, where they decided to, UCRs was kind of a generic, and just to give you a quick example, just using the studio, you break into Mike Davis's building in here, and then you commit multiple crimes within. This is a very unique one because you got other office space in here. Let's say they break into every office. Just generically using, they would say that was one crime. It was a burglary to Mike Davis's building. Whatever happened inside was in the report, of course, and the person could be charged with those crimes. When they came up with NIBRs in 2022, and we had to integrate to NIBRs, it went to incident base, meaning that if you broke the same scenario, every incident that occurs in here had to be reported separately under what they call NIBRs. We all expected this as chiefs and sheriffs, that you're going to see a significant increase in crime just because the coding was going to be put out differently. Well, we didn't get a full year in there because 2022 didn't kick off until about February when they started reporting. Some agencies are still not reporting correctly to this day. So we had our first full year of the new NIBRs reporting system in 2023. So here's what the Federal Bureau of Investigation actually breaks down violent crime. It's homicide, it's robbery, it's sexual battery, and it's aggravated assault. But aggravated assault in the north is aggravated battery to us, if that makes sense. It's called assault up there. It's called battery down here. But that's how we actually report those crimes. I'm going to give you a sheet for the last 4 years since I've been your sheriff that came straight from the records of the Uniform Crime Report into NIBRs of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I can't skew those numbers. They come from the federal government. So we've had a 10% decrease in violent crime in St. Johns County. I would love to tell you that's Sheriff Hardwick's great idea. We did this. You can't control a murder. I can't go out there and patrol streets because I don't have a gang problem in St. Johns County like TK does up there, where maybe you increase crime or presence in certain areas, you can kind of quell that thing. I can't control sexual batteries because we don't have sexual batteries in St. Johns County where a girl or a man is snatched and a sexual battery is actually, those days of David Shuey, you remember I'm talking about, the old Davy Shuey days, knock on wood, we haven't had those in St. Johns County. The same thing goes for robbery. We have, sudden snatching by robbery in there. Maybe that's the one we can actually do a little bit better on because, again, you get in those parking lots where you have maybe purse snatches that are actually robberies. But again, we haven't had, the only increase we had in that entire category, which actually skewed the numbers of why it's only 10% reduction in violent crime, was there was an 18% increase in sexual battery. Again, you have 2 or 3 sexual batteries in a year where you don't have a lot of sexual batteries, you just increase your crime significantly. So when I send you that box, which I can explain to you, it will show you from the year I took over sheriff to the year I'm currently serving as your sheriff, we've had a 10% reduction in crime. Have we had increases in crime in St. Johns County? Yes, we have. As I'm tracking today, of course, I get a biweekly update of crime increases in there. You'll see some, where we have an increase right now, the way we sit today, of an increase, of course, in our overdoses, of our fatal overdoses. We're seeing an increase in, a significant increase in our commercial burglaries and our residential burglaries. But here's what's happening with those, because I asked my staff, I was like, hey, give me a good example when I talk in front of a lot of people of why we have an increase in those. Well, Sheriff, we have a lot of houses under construction. And unfortunately, a lot of people know what's going on there, meaning that a delivery of stone was done today, Frigidaire and 6 houses were put in empty houses today. Those are burglaries to residential structures. If you enter in that property and commit a crime within, meaning stealing of Frigidaires or stealing the appliances, you just committed a burglary and probably a grand theft. Well, I'm going to have an increase in that because there's probably a little bit of inside job going on that we don't know about. And these construction crews, as you know, in St. Johns County, they're working 24/7 every day of the week on everything you can think of. Mike, you're in this business, you know what I'm talking about. So we've had an increase in that. So, but with that, again, I gave a speech today and I actually said that had an increase in domestic violence. We really haven't had a big increase in domestic violence. Matter of fact, it's a little bit of a reduction. So our increase in crime and violent crime is non-existent and it's a public record. You can ask, you already asked me for it. You're going to get it.
Yeah. All right. So I asked this question yesterday of the other candidate. Can you give me some examples of gentlemen you worked for in the past and how they've influenced you, or even, people in your personal life of how they've influenced you and your leadership style?
It's funny. So I've been a coach a long time, and I've learned a lot from coaches too as well. And I learned a lot from a guy named Matt Olesnovich. I'm talking about Mike, and Troy, you do too as well. Matt Lesevich was my coach when I was actually coaching at St. Joseph Academy. And we had a talk because the first year we took over there, we let the kids run amok. And then the second year, so Matt came out of, Coach O didn't come out of locally here. So he had no ties to the neighborhood. So he knew coming out of Tallahassee that he was going to get a fair shake with these kids. The first year we let these kids, and I say run amok, they're great kids. I speak to most of their parents now, and these kids are phenomenal, but they didn't have the discipline. It wasn't in the details. So we get down as a coaching staff after our first season. We went 0-10, and we said it's going to be in the details. Every kid will match. They'll wear the same, whether it be the same shoes. One wears a shield, everyone wears a shield. Someone wears black under their eyes, they all wear black. It's in the details. Fast forward to 3 years after that, Mike knows this. We went 13-0 across the entire state and ended up winning the independent championship up in Tallahassee. And I say that because I learned a lot from Matty O, because if you were to look at the guy, wears glasses, just wasn't that guy like can be a football fanatic, and he was that guy. I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot from a guy named Sergeant Major Dunning. Sergeant Major Dunning was an infantry ranger. He was my first sergeant and my platoon sergeant in my second combat tour. I watched what he did, by the way. He was kind of a silent guy where he wasn't arrogant, and he never let his ego get in the way. He led by example, led from the front. He was never not with the troops. He never hid behind the doors, per se, in combat situations. I learned a lot from him. I've learned a lot from, I'm a leadership fanatic, as you all know. I taught leadership at the United States OCS Officer Candidate School, of course, for a long time in the United States military, my last 6 years. And then I watched leadership, of course, in this profession. I've learned more from bad leadership than I've actually learned from good leadership, because I'm not that guy that idolizes anybody. I put my pants on the same way everybody else does, and that's a true statement. But I've also watched the way my wife has raised our two boys, and her faith, of course, in God. And so I've learned more out of that than I have. I learn more from my people that have no rank and nothing on their sleeves than I learn from people that have the highest rank. And the reason why I say that, there's so many gifted people, especially in my agency, that have the ability to lead, and they have nothing on their shoulders to identify who they are. And I pay attention to who they are. They do the right thing all the time when no one's looking. I saw it today when I was with Deputy Harpin. Just a quick example today, walking into a school with EBD students, and he was over there coloring. He was reading with them. He was helping do math problems. He didn't have to do that because the sheriff was in there. It's just who he is in life. And I watch it every single day with my people. And I'm going to go back and say one thing I forgot, by the way. When you say crime has increased in my agency by 51%, you've just told every one of my deputy sheriffs you're not working. And I'll be honest with you, it pisses me off, because my men and women work hard. They hold themselves accountable. We had 13 internal affairs last year, complaints, out of 562 deputy sheriffs that work all the time. And that includes my jail. But when you say crime has increased in my agency, you just told my deputy sheriffs they're not doing their job and they're not working hard enough. And I disagree with you. They're working harder than every agency in the state of Florida. In the United States, we are the gold standard in this profession right now. If there was an issue with that, I'd be hurting on recruiting retention. I'm 5 deputy sheriffs down on the street as we speak today, and I'm probably 6 deputy sheriffs down in my jail. That's out of 562 deputy sheriffs. That's unheard of across the country. And I'm at full staff in my comms. So when you take a punch at me and you tell me that my deputy sheriffs aren't working, that just, it cuts me deep in my throat, because we work hard, including myself. I'm still in uniform every single day.
So you addressed one of the criticisms that, and I think Amanda looked at the mailers. You've got some of the most negative mailers we're not, Tom Leak wins by a long.
Oh, by far, yeah.
By a long shot. I've kept every single mailer that's come to me.
You've yet to see one.
My mailbox it just wants a vacation.
It's so sad.
But one of the other items is renovation of your office.
Sure.
Would you like to address that?
Yeah.
And let everyone.
I shouldn't have to, by the way, because everybody I talked to out there has no interest in this. But, I became the sheriff, of course, as you know. 3 sheriffs sat in the old sheriff's office. Neil Perry, Francis O'Laughlin, and David Shore all sat in that office. I remember walking in and seeing every one of those sheriffs in that desk. If you study leadership at all, you know that when leadership change happens, you have to make a change, not just in the title, in the position, in the name, in the rank, but it goes with just the office space too as well. I never sat a day in those sheriffs' office. I actually sent their desk off to be refurbished because it has a lot of history. 5 other sheriffs have sat there before me. And I decided I'm going to go ahead and move into the old medical examiner's office. That was where Dr. Steiner and Big Don used to cut bodies up. I hate to say that, be so candid, but everybody knows what that means. It's at the corner, of course, of A Avenue and Lewis Speedway. And I know for a fact because I attended autopsy in there as a young detective, and I felt like I wanted to be in the worst building. Why are my employees in the office where the medical examiner was cutting bodies, autopsies, and it was given to us for a reason. Nobody else wanted it. So anyway, so I took that office over. We threw some paint in the walls. There were some areas in there that didn't have doors and windows for other staff employees over there. I moved the office of the sheriff over there where patrol was at, to include patrol, and also to community engagement. We were all kind of stuck in that building. Well, after my second year here, we moved the entire comm center out of the current 1963 Wise Potato Chip Factory, which is where our comms, again, nobody wanted the building, so they gave it to the sheriff's office over the years. So once my comms actually moved out of there, communications, 911 communications moved out of there, we decided to move the office of the sheriff because it had outgrown the actual office of where the medical examiner is at. So my office, if you know, and you remember going on the tours there when we were kids in school at CPS, I'm actually at the old dispersal area where they used to actually do the bagging area. They turned into a commercial kitchen. The commercial kitchen is where my office sits today. Matter of fact, if you're sitting at my desk on the right-hand side, there's a small dip in the carpet there. That's where the actual old grease drain.
Where the EOC
yeah, that's
kitchen
it.
was.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So we threw some, we actually made the offices look great in there because I'll be the last person to leave this facility here. My employees deserve better than this. My HR and risk did move into the old medical examiner's office. We put some money over there into that building. They know what it was before. I'm sorry. The only ones that want that building now is my forensics team and my CSTs. But yeah, of course, I put some work into to make a better workspace for myself and our employees too as well. But I'm in the 1963 Wise Potato Chip Factory, which you went to as a child, and so did I.
Well, Vicki would agree with you that no one else wanted it.
Nobody's
over there
yes.
too. So
Sure.
Well, I mean, someone sent me a thing of the anniversary of Charlie, Francis, and Jean.
Jean, yeah.
Yeah, I ate out of that kitchen. Believe me, that kitchen needed some work. And that was 20 years ago.
Well, I think you remember, but we took over that as an EOC and dispatch center, and I think it was 1997-ish, roughly. I mean, but before that, of course, as you know, was the Wise Potato Chip Factory. But we keep getting these hand-me-downs over the years that nobody else wants, And the medical examiner, I would love to get my people out of there and level that building.
Try being Parks and Rec, mister.
I got you. You're right. Sure. Yeah. So yes, both offices were renovated.
Hand-me-downs.
Yeah. Both offices were renovated.
We're like, woo!
The medical examiners where autopsies were performed, I went in there, and then the 1963 Wise Potato Chip Factory where I sit today, and I'll be the last one out of there.
Yeah, we are in the water sewage plant, so
yeah, same thing, same concept.
So the last question is about open door policy.
Yeah.
So I've been hammered by a couple of people in comments and text messages during this. Ask Sheriff Hardwick about his open door policy.
Sure.
So what's an open door policy? How do you handle people coming to you with complaints, and how do you deal with that?
Sure. So you got to be, it's just kind of a hybrid thing. But first of all, everybody in this agency has my personal cell phone number. I don't carry an agency cell phone. I haven't since I've been a leader here. I don't sit at my desk like the traditional. I think they're used to the traditional leader sitting at their desk and waiting for open arms to come in my office. I don't sit there. Most of my deputy sheriffs and my employees find me. I'm a big leader by walking. This morning I walked my jail at 10 till 6 this morning. It takes me about 2 hours to get through there. Those people on that over there texting now will tell you that they probably didn't see me this morning because they weren't in the jail. They weren't working today. But I walk the jail. I try to do it once a week. I try to walk through my admin's offices the same way. I try to lead by walking. I don't sit in my office. I'm not the traditional 8 to 5. I have very unorthodox office hours. I don't have any office hours. I come to work when I get up out of bed. If I can't sleep, I come to bed. Whether it's 2:30 in the morning, they'll hear me on the radio. They may hear me at no later than 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. Again, at nighttime, of course, I coach. I was coaching, but I'm probably the most accessible sheriff as far as things, how you get a hold of me. When we have a new employee hiring, my wife and I stay. We release all of our staff out of there, and the only ones that are in there are the new hires and their family. We give them our personal home phone numbers, my wife's personal phone number. We usually tell them where we live, and we tell them to reach out to us, and we provide every single service possible. So when you talk about accessible, you want me to sit in my office, you got the wrong sheriff. You want me to get out and do traffic stops and back my deputy sheriffs on, walk through comms, try to dispatch a call. I got a little nervous. Walk through my jail in the morning time. But my job also too is to get out and break the barriers of my community. I speak in front of HOAs, COAs, you name it, every race, creed, color, religion, sexual orientation, and age. My job is to get out there and be the voice of the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. I wear this uniform every single day. I'm in long sleeves every single day. I'm not TK Waters. I love my brother to the north, but I'm not going to put a tie on. I just sweat a little more than he does. But I don't know if you asked for a more accessible person today. When I walked out today, Corporal Hartz walked into my office unannounced. He walked to my office and there was nothing said to him. I said, sit down, have a seat. He physically sat in front of my desk. We had a conversation today. Callie, one of my interns, walked to my office today. I was typing on the computer. You got a minute, Sheriff? Absolutely. My door at policy, sometimes if people don't get their way in life, and this is no digs on anybody, but it's that small percentage of society that doesn't get their way. And with that being said, they take stabs at you, not accessible. I'm probably the most accessible sheriff the sheriff's office has ever seen. I'm being compared to Neil Perry when he first took office, and that would have been a long, long time ago.
I can tell you this.
Well, I know he'll talk to anyone because you come on a regular basis to the morning show.
Yeah.
And that is a diverse crew.
Well, I can tell you, yeah, I've had three sheriffs that I've dealt with since I've been here. And,
sure.
And Neil Perry was the first one there, and Sheriff Shore. And I've had access to all three. But I can tell you right now, and anybody out there who's writing the things that you're not accessible, I don't know a single sheriff or political figure that is out in the public and showing your face. And Kendall's right there with you, more than you.
Sure.
And,
if they want to argue with they can argue some of the other stuff, but if they want to argue with me about that, I got your back on that one, because that one to me, you pick up the phone. Sheriff Shore was pretty good about picking up the phone. I wasn't quite at the level of Neil Perry's level.
He was the same way.
He would have the undersheriff call me.
Sure.
And I had a great relationship with Joel.
Blante, of course.
Yeah, Joel. And, but I mean, as far as, and I don't think people understand how fortunate we are as a community to have three sheriffs that are available as you.
Sure.
Yeah. Try it in Jacksonville.
Well, our community has grown over the last 10 years by, I say 43%. I think it's more than that, to be honest with you, but they say it's 43% in 10 years. It's not as easy as it was. And they want this agency to go back how it was 50 years ago. You can't do it. We've got to progress forward. We're 1,000 people now. And this morning I sent out, text message. I'll show you my phone. I sent text messages to everybody that's birthday. I had 5 people that was birthdays are today. I sent every one of them a text messages from my phone today. I do it every single day. So as far as accessible, they have my phone. See, what they don't know is I'm not a kiss and tell type of guy. So when a deputy sheriff or one of my employees reaches out to me, I don't go brag about it. That's a personal conversation with our deputy sheriffs. I'm not going to get on the radio here and show you my text messages today with all my employees. It's nobody's business. And that's why I'm so trusted, because they know I'm not going to kiss and tell. But not everybody gets their ways in this profession, and not everybody gets, the ribbons like they think they do, of course, when you play certain sports.
Well, and I will say our company has been next to the Sheriff's Department ever since AD put his first shop out here. Right?
Sure.
And so we've had a good relationship with the Sheriff's Department over the years. There's been times I've called you, and at times I called David Shore. My dad would always call Neil Perry. I didn't get the chance to call Neil. He and Dad went to school together, so that was Dad's call. But there, you've always returned calls, always been very helpful. We had a situation a couple weeks ago that I just asked for a name in the department. You got that right back to me, and it was very helpful to us. And I don't want to go into it because it's a personal situation with an employee of a sub and trying to help them. But you guys were awesome in being able to do that. So, yeah, I feel like communication wise, we have always been blessed to have good communications with the Sheriff's Department. And as a neighbor, we appreciate that. So,
Corporal Hertz was in my office just a little while ago, like I told you, and I was looking for an email to show him, because I sent an email about first responders actually today, or co-responders. And I was going through my emails. He's like, "Oh my God, Sheriff, are those all from you?" I said, "Yes, I've been catching up for the last 4 hours. I've been working the polls for the last, 3 or 4 days. I had to come back to the office and be the sheriff too as well." And but talking about accessible, I'm not sure how much more accessible I get. By the way, I don't travel with an entourage. I have my wife. She's my entourage, by the way. I drive my car by myself, and I'm approachable in every store. There's no place in St. John's County that I can't walk because I'm embarrassed or I've done something morals or ethic wise. So if this is what they're attacking me on, I'm actually proud.
Yep. We got about 3 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Because we got to head out. So
I do too. Yeah.
Is there something that we've left off of this conversation that you'd like to talk about? Kind of as a closing words from you as the sheriff and as a candidate.
Sure, and I'm kind of embarrassed for not just me, but other political figures that are running for office, because we're supposed to hold the morals and the ethics at the highest standard, especially the office of the sheriff. You will not see one negative thing come from my campaign in the mail or on TV about my opponent. He's got a family. He's a good guy. I've known him my entire law enforcement career. I don't go down that road, and there's so many things I could go down that road, but that's not who I am in life. And by the way, when I'm done this professional career, I'm going to walk in this community with my head held high. But I have some of the most phenomenal men and women working for the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office that are providing first-class customer service. I apologize to them that they're getting involved in the weeds of politics, because they deserve better than this, I'll be honest with you. However, I am your sheriff, and I'll be your sheriff for the next 4 years. I'll represent you the same way I've represented you now. I've taken care of you with pay, with benefits, with equipment. I can't make everybody happy, but I will tell you this: I lead from the front. I lead by example. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't cheat on my wife. I believe in God, and I believe in your right for your constitutional rights for America. So thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I appreciate your support and being open and honest. And I wish all the politicians out there good luck. But smearing campaigns don't turn people on anymore like they used to. So good luck, and I appreciate you. God bless America.
All right, Sheriff Hardwick, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will have a regular show tomorrow, where all the things I thought to say the last 2 days, I'll be able to say, because Amanda and Levi will be here and we'll have no candidates here. So, but we felt like we wanted to give you an opportunity to get to know 2 of the candidates that were running. We feel like it's an important office. We appreciate Jim Priester coming in and Sheriff Hardwick coming in and doing these interviews. So thank you very much to both of them and to all of you. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.